Hey guys, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun when we can. Today we're going to talk about an update with Marathon, and Alinea Analytics has basically released something, and they keep tabs on stuff, right? And these are their estimates, of course. This is not actual information from Bungie or Sony or anybody else. This is just estimates, but usually they're fairly spot on. And we also have an article with Paul Tassi at Forbes pretty much confirming this from his insiders that he has at Bungie, which he has several. So we're only looking at Marathon selling 1.2 million copies across all platforms. Basically, gross revenue with copies sold. Again, this does not include like microtransactions and stuff. Basically, looking at $55 million, which is horrible. They need way more than that because this is a AAA budget game, and what that means is that they've basically spent probably at a minimum of at least 200 million just on the budget over the development of 7 years that they've had for this game. Daily active users last weekend was roughly 380,000 players, which is pretty good. You know, they need to be able to sell those microtransactions now, but yeah, the bulk of the sales, man, they definitely need more than 1.2 million in sales. And again, the majority is well over on Steam, roughly at about 70%, and then 19% on PlayStation and 11% on Xbox. And yeah, people are just not excited about this game. And I want to address this right away because I understand it looks like the internet is killing Marathon or killing these other games, but I gotta say no. The studios are killing themselves by creating games that players do not want to play. Because when it came to the boycott for Hogwarts Legacy, the people enjoyed the game and were excited for the IP, and it was built really well by Avalanche, so they went out and bought the game. Right? They made tons in sales. That's why Hogwarts Legacy 2 is being made, which I don't think is overly going to do that well. Also, when we take a look at Lords of the Fallen, it was the same thing. The boycott for that because they used, you know, man and woman versus body type 1 and 2. There was a boycott over that, but that also failed because even though they made a pretty rough game at launch, Hexworks actually built the game that people wanted and they stuck with it and fixed it. Now we have Lords of the Fallen 2, which is in a much better spotlight, and they made the sales that they needed to make so that they could continue forward. And even though this was their first game, I still feel like they did a pretty dang good job. So Lords of the Fallen 2, I'm excited for. And there's been other stories too. Again, the internet just reports what the masses are already doing in sales. And if the masses are not excited about a game, they're not going to buy it. If they're not excited about the future of a game, especially when it's live service, they're not going to buy it because it's kind of seen as an investment now. Because free to play models are now $40 in most cases, and video games, generally speaking, even at Nintendo, are now $70. So, and then of course all of the microtransaction stuff. And so here we are with Marathon. Destiny 2 players, they're frustrated, right? Because Destiny 2 is in the tank. We already reported on that. They have trouble getting to 10,000 players now on Steam, which is not a ton. They're not making a ton of money from that. They also did not want to work on building a Destiny 3. They just wanted to run Destiny 2 forever and just basically make it a game as a gas game as a service. And just this too was the ultimately to the like the problem with Battlefield 6 and Black Ops 7. And there's been other games like that too. Is that they're pushing and making the game to push it for a more casual audience instead of making the game and then adding microtransactions to it. They're making microtransactions in stores and thinking, okay, how can we build the entire game design around the store? And that's what I feel like Marathon is doing. And then again, Marathon was supposed to be a more, quote, casual game, kind of like an extraction shooter break in for the console market. And clearly that didn't happen. We're not even at 500,000 sales across 92 million PlayStation 5 users and roughly 40 million Xbox users. Like, it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen, dude. And then Marathon was supposed to be a more casual extraction shooter, and I feel like it completely went the other way. So this is not about you and me liking or hating Marathon. This is about what the masses are doing. in this space. And this is why it's such a big deal, is because it's Bungie. Okay, they've basically spent now buying them and then continued development of games that they have. We're looking at $4 billion now. $4 billion. This is why it's big news, is because if PlayStation bombs $4 billion with the other 12 live service games that they've canceled, it's not going to go good. And then we just saw too that this year already, PlayStation has already closed Blue Point, which didn't make any sense because they basically had one really good game and then it was just a total debacle after that. That can be another video. So yeah, Blue Point is closed down, and then they also just closed down Dark Outlaw Games. They literally just bought them and established them last year. We're pretty much at the 1 year anniversary. They've just really started the hiring process to actually start building the game that they're developing, and they don't even get a chance. And it's just like it's over. And that's a horrible feeling as a developer or as an employee. But too, I can understand too if Sony needs to be cutting costs because this is failing. Again, we have another example of another company cutting out IPs, cutting out smaller projects, canceling other studios or closing them simply because a bigger live service game didn't perform. It's not Dark Outlaw's fault. It's not Blue Point's fault either, necessarily. And I mean, this is getting so frustrating. And this is why I personally hate live service. I didn't buy Arc Raiders. I didn't buy Marathon. I played the beta test for both of those. But again, live service is what it is. I mean, they screwed Battlefield 6 for me. They screwed Black Ops 7 for me. And I am just not excited about any live service game that's basically coming out anymore. You know what I am playing? I'm playing games like Crimson Desert or like Lords of the Fallen. Or I'm getting excited for The Expanse Osiris Reborn. Or like GTA 6. I'm excited for that type of stuff because of the story and the character development and all of that stuff. Because it's built as a game first. It's not trying to get into my wallet or pocket. It understands and respects my wallet, respects my time, and is actually working on building something that I want to engage with. Whether it's something really small, like Dredge, which wasn't actually really that small, but you could keep it as small or kind of short as you wanted. But that was a really well made indie game, all the way to something like what Pearl Abyss is making with Crimson Desert, which is a huge, massive, hundreds of hours of game, right? It's absolutely insane. And then any other type of game in between that is respecting my time and making an experience for me instead of a storefront for them. That is the freaking difference. And I get frustrated with this type of stuff. And I know people too are tired about hearing about Marathon, but until the publishers figure this out, whether it's EA or Activision Blizzard or Bungie, Sony, or whatever, or Xbox, whoever it is, I don't care. Live service is getting old. It's not just me anymore. I've been saying this since 2024, and I will continue to say it. It is getting old for people, and they're getting tired of this shit. When we take a look over at Paul Tassi, we get a better breakdown for actually what's going on. But yeah, 1.2 million in estimated sales. We're looking at 70% of marathon population, 19% on PlayStation, 11% on Xbox. And then, yeah, PlayStation. Paul Tassi made a note that PlayStation didn't even break 20% of its first party game because it was basically made and published by Sony. And yeah, this is the big, kind of PlayStation's where it's at. And honestly, I don't think it is. I think it's Steam. After a peak 478,000 daily active users on the first weekend, it's holding about 345 right now. Or excuse me, it's holding about 345 daily active users, and then this past weekend was 380. So this is where it currently sits. That's still quite a few players that are actually playing across all the platforms. Also, I think it's interesting that 28 hours, the average playtime on Steam is 28 hours, much higher than on console. 22% of Steam players also were past the 50-hour mark, and then 7% were only at past the 100-hour mark, which is kind of insane. But yeah, again, this was not really built for consoles. And again, it seems so easy for some of us to not make games like Veilguard or to not make games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League or to make changes to Battlefield to make it more like COD, like Battlefield 6, or to be making games like this with Marathon and betting the farm for an entire studio when the community of Bungie has been saying, make Destiny 3. And maybe they don't want to make Destiny 3 anymore, or maybe they want to try something else, or actually make something a little bit cheaper than what Destiny 3 would cost. But it's going to be pretty mother frickin' expensive when Bungie fails. Yes, fails because of this game. $4 billion down the simply because we're building a store for, and this is what it is, games as a service. Now I think they'll continue to ultimately support the game for a while. Okay, they will continue to support it as long as it's paying for the server cost. They will extract as much money as they can. But again, I really think Bungie's fate is sealed, and there's no way around that. It doesn't really matter what I think is going to happen with the game here on out. This is what the freaking sales are, and the idea that they sold over 2 million copies is completely incorrect. And yeah, they need to sell more like 5 million copies to break even. Like, they're not even close. They're not even close. When we take a look at SteamDB and we take a look at Marathon, this is the score. It's been coming up. People have been enjoying it more. And again, I think the people that enjoy the game, they should be enjoying the game. But again, we're having lower peaks and lower troughs. And you can't have that. That is a declining game. And here we are with basically almost a full month. Well, 3 weeks. Basically have 3 weeks, and this is where we're at. Remember, the playtest was 143,000, I think, that were testing. 88,000 of those came back, at least on Steam. And, we're under half of that now. We're under half. This was basically the first weekend right here. This is the second weekend. We're just slowly well, it's not slow. And the thing too is, people are saying that this is not another Concord. But again, we have to understand that a big game like Marathon should not be failing in just a month. The writing should not be on the wall in its first month. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. That never used to be a problem. And again, if publishers can't see what's happening, they need to understand this before they completely destroy all of their studios in the name of live service. And again, I'm not saying don't make live service games. I'm saying don't bet the motherfucking farm on one game to kill all of the other studios that they've already been closing. Again, this is almost 7 years in development now. And what for? What are we doing? This is why this industry is on fire. This is why we're having the layoffs. Since October of 2022, we've lost over a third now of game developers in the entire industry. But if it has to collapse and fail, basically to get back to a normal where games are games again, then fine. I'm all for it because I don't want to pay for this type of stuff. They should have spent $75 million. They should have spent $100 million on this, and that would have been, that would have been a lot more feasible, right? That would be a lot more feasible. But if they spent $200 million outside of marketing, outside of server costs, outside of post-launch, which again, we don't necessarily know that. But again, this is why Sony is not like, woohoo, sales, success, because it's not. This is why they're closing Blue Point. This is why they closed Dark Outlaw Games. And they will continue to close more. They also just canned 50 in their mobile games department. And while, again, that's not a ton of people, it still shows that they're having to cut back. They also canned their financial department. That's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. And they're also changing how they're making their TVs and working in partnership, or at least trying to finalize that, with TCL out of China to make it easier to actually buy Sony TVs. Why are they doing that? Freaking Bungie. because it was $4 billion? Come on, guys, do the math. Let's stop saying that we need to give games a chance when clearly people know in 2 hours if it's for them or not. Okay? If we need to give games a chance like Marathon, okay, then we need to give games like Crimson Desert a chance for more than just an hour or 2 or 3 of gameplay because the game is so much bigger in scope. It is utterly insane. But again, it's not a live service game. All of the effort and money going forward has basically been spent, and that's what's going to be spent. And they have developed an entire world to play in. And it's a blast. And they've sold over 3 million copies now. That means that even at a sale price of roughly 10% at $63, which they had other versions as well, but saying at least at $63 at 3 million in sales, they've made over $200 million already in their first week of launch. So yeah, Pearl Abyss is basically broke even now, probably at this point. Maybe they need to make another 100 million to get to 300 million, but yeah, I think they'll get there. I don't think that's going to be a problem because they're already, working on fixing the game. They're already working on making things better. But yeah, this kind of stuff has to stop. And games journalists, okay, your reputation is what it is because you're saying, well, at least it's not a Concord. Dude, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The studio is dead. It's over for Bungie. There's no way they won't have layoffs. There's no way they're not going to close. Possibly close at this point. They are going to have more pain. And again, they don't have a single game or IP that is successful. So what happens to the studio, generally speaking? It's over. I'm not happy about that, and other people aren't happy about that either. But yeah, this is what's so frustrating. It's not my videos or someone else's videos or all of us together collaborating and trying to get all of these games to fail. No, we want games to be fun and good, but again, I think there's a discrepancy between those like myself that have been playing games for 25 years. Okay, actually almost 30 at this point. I've been playing games for almost 30 years. And then to see what's been happening with live service for the last decade, that's why I'm pissed. It's my perspective, right? It's not that I want this stuff to fail. It's that I see what is being robbed out of the games and they're turning into stores. I said it too with Battlefield 6. The game is the illusion. The focus is the store. And that's what Marathon is. And it's the worst battle pass we've ever had. And anyway, I'm just going to be done ranting because, yeah, there isn't any more to say. This is over. When Bungie officially has layoffs or closes, I'll be there to report on that. But yeah, I'm not reporting on this anymore because it's not worth my time. The next thing that I'm working on right now is Crimson Desert. That review will be coming next week. I'm going to get some more playtime in, roughly 20 hours in right now. Very enjoyable for me as a player, and the masses are enjoying it too. Do I think it'll make Game of the Year? No, because we're going to have Resident Evil Requiem, and we're also going to have GTA 6. But we'll see what wins Game of the Year, and we'll see what players pick and what Jeff Keighley picks with his board. But yeah, we'll see. I'll see you guys on the next one.